Maybe I'm not super proud of everything I've done in my life, but made for some good stories. So today, I'm actually going to start a conversation that Andy and Jill and Mark are going to continue, and it's out of Matthew 6. And so I'm going to start out by reading just a little bit of it, a couple sections of it. And I'm reading from the New Living Translation, but 1 through 6, it says, "Watch out, don't do good deeds publicly. Don't do your good deeds publicly to be admired by others, for you will lose the reward from your Father in heaven. When you give to someone in need, don't do as the hypocrites do, blowing trumpets in the synagogues and streets to call attention to their acts of charity. I tell you the truth, they have received all the reward they will ever get. But when you give to someone in need, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Give your gifts in private, and your Father, who sees everything, will reward you. When you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray publicly on street corners and in the synagogues where everyone can see them. I tell you the truth, that is all the reward they will ever get. But when you pray, go away by yourself, shut the door behind you, and pray to your Father in private. Then your Father, who sees everything, will reward you." I'm going to scoot down to verse 16. "And when you fast, don't make it obvious, as the hypocrites do, for they try to look miserable and disheveled, so people will admire them for their fasting. I tell you the truth, that is the only reward they will ever get. But when you fast, comb your hair and wash your face, then no one will notice that you are fasting, except your Father who knows what you do in private. And your Father who sees everything will reward you." So, others are going to talk about prayer, fasting, etc., all the things that we do in following Jesus. But what I want to talk about today is what I picked up on. 3 times it says about the people who did it to be seen by men, that when they did it, that was all the reward they would ever get, right? And then it says about the people that did it in private, as it's instructed in private, that the Father who sees everything will reward them. So let me ask you this. In both situations, who got what they wanted? Who got what they wanted? Both of them. Both of them. The people that were doing it to be seen by men actually got what they wanted. They were seen by men and honored. They were given a reward. Who'd it come from? Men. The people who did it in private also got what they wanted. But who'd it come from? God. So in both scenarios, this isn't a story, and this isn't set out where there's somebody who didn't get what they wanted. Now, do you think that for those that were doing it publicly, do you think that they were aware necessarily that everything that they were getting was from men? I don't always think about it like that. Personally, I can't deny that there are times where I'm just like, I just need some compliments, or that's what I want. And I've done plenty of things for the wrong reasons, which I've already shared. Plenty of things. But they all got what they wanted. This isn't a story where someone didn't get the reward that they were going after. So I'm going to propose something a little bit bold, so you'll have to give me a little bit of time to explain it before you throw your rocks. When it comes to the matters of the heart, I want to propose that where you're at right now, you're getting exactly what you want. Where you're at right now, when it comes to the matters of the heart, you're getting exactly what you want. Now, let me explain that. Is anybody like me that has, when I go and do something, there's like a bunch of different desires that come up. Like, here's a relevant example. I'm up here speaking on a stage. Now, I have a major part of my heart that just wants to share something that connects with God, where you can connect with God on your own. Do you think that there are times when coming up here, I'm like, I hope they like what I say. And I get concerned that if I don't say it well enough, then you'll stop listening to me, or you won't like me as much. Do you think that those thoughts go through my mind? Absolutely, right? We're all people. Can anybody relate with that? Right? Now, which one, so if I come up with two different desires of my heart, which one is going to win? Which one's really going to come out? Because I realize they can't separate from them. I can try to isolate it in my mind, but ultimately, I'm going to get what I'm really looking for. If I have and because the audience that receives what I have to give, the audience that I focus on is going to be who I get my reward from. And when the desire to just communicate the goodness of God to you is greater than my desire for your approval, connection's going to happen. Not just with you guys and God, but with me and God. Now, if my desire, if I come in, and frankly, I've had days like this where I'm more concerned about being accepted for what I say, I will get exactly what I want if it's set out. It just won't be the reward from Him. When it comes to the matters of our heart, we're actually getting, at any given time, exactly what we want. Now, sometimes this gets confusing because we haven't seen what it looks like in its fullness. Has anybody here had a conversation with God face-to-face in the flesh? I'm not talking about like praying and all that stuff, because you could go crazy with this question, right? That's the fullness that we're expecting in the days to come, right? But right now, we are praying to our Father who is unseen, right? So we haven't seen the fullness of it. Or if, let's say that, just a practical example, if your greatest desire is, I want a brand new house. How many people have built a house? Decent number. When you start that process and you start building and you've put money into it and you've sacrificed time and energy and all that stuff, do you have your house yet? No, but you are getting what you want. It's just that it takes some time to come to fruition, right? You're getting it. It's just not there yet because it takes time. So this is where it gets confusing. But what we really want is where our reward is. Another simple example. If I go into a coffee shop, and let's say that the Lord puts on my heart to share the good news with somebody that I don't know, that's sitting over in this other table, and I go up and I'm like, man, I really want to, I would love to tell them the story about how God takes the shame out of your story. I'd love to tell them about that. And then there's that part of me also, and I'm sure that plenty will relate here, there's that part of me also that's like, you know what, if I don't go and say anything, I don't have to risk being foolish or embarrassed or humiliated or rejected. There's some plus sides to that, right? Those are two different desires. So what desire is going to win? The one that has taken the most ground in our hearts. The desire, the greatest thing that you want, where your reward really sits. Like if you had to just say, in my whole life, if everything else really failed, but I got this one thing right and it made it all worth it, what is that reward? What's that reward? That will change how I address it. I've had that coffee shop example where sometimes I went and I spoke with them. And it may have been uncomfortable, and at times it was even embarrassing, because it didn't work out like I thought. Just because He calls you into it doesn't mean that it's all going to be peachy, right? But then I've also had that time where I didn't say something, and you know what? I wasn't embarrassed, I wasn't humiliated, I didn't have any of that stuff happen, but I left with this conviction. And you know what? In both scenarios, I got exactly what I wanted. Even if it wasn't exactly what I thought it should be. I got my comfort. The value, when I didn't speak up, my value for comfort at that moment was greater than my value to tell them the truth. I got exactly what I wanted. I got the comfort. but I missed the other reward. You know, really, when it comes to change in our lives, the only point that we really change is when the desires kind of switch in their importance in some fashion. They grow more or they decrease more. That's how change happens in our life. A lot of times change doesn't actually happen until not having that other reward. Like if I keep doing that comfortable thing and I don't talk to him, 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 at some point the conviction starts weighing so heavily that the price is bigger to stay comfortable. So my desire has to change. It has to change if I want that reward. What your reward is affecting everything about how you show up today. What your reward is affecting everything about how you show up today. Even you may be doing the things that look right. The hypocrites, quote unquote, that it talked about, they were doing the same things that we as Christ followers are doing. But what was the difference between doing them in private and doing them publicly? Publicly, everyone else could see them, and so the reward was with the audience. Privately, only God, who sees everything, could see them, and the reward was with the audience. It's like, let's say that I really, really value my relationship with Jessica, and I do. But if I go and I speak to the roughly 300 people in this room, and I'm like, oh man, I think this woman is so awesome, and I loved my time that I spend with her, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and I tell like everybody in the world. But I never actually hang out with her. What do you think she would say about how I'm coming across? Do you think that I'm saying all of those things out of my relationship with you or my relationship with her? Right? Because if my reward is the relationship I have with her, why do I need to talk to you about it? But if my bigger concern, if really my reward has to do with you, then yes, I'm going to talk to you about it. It's with you, it's not with her, then I'm going to share everything with you. This is a hard thing. You know, when I look at the people in this story who did this for the praise of men, I honestly, just in my heart and as a human being, believe that they did want connection with God. But man, it is so easy to be deceived sometimes. This is the importance of community and people who will speak into your life and help on this. Oh my gosh, that having the truth is a big deal here, to stay out of deception. Because the reality is I think that they actually did want relationship with God, deep relationship with God. But they got hung up on this deception of having the reward in the wrong place. It can be too easy to have the reward in the wrong place. But where your reward is at defines everything about how you're showing up today. I'm not going to stand up here and say that what we choose as our reward in our life is good or bad. I'm going to say up here, if it is so that we're getting exactly what we want, then my question to put out there today is, are you happy with what you're getting? I'm not going to call anything good or bad. I'm just going to say, are you happy with what you're getting? Because there are limits to every reward. I still am looking for the limits in reward of relationship with God. I'm still looking for those limits. You know, maybe it's that I can't settle to be comfortable and all that. But I have found that if I put my reward in things like money, it's not a bad thing at certain times. It's nice to have money, to buy things, to spend things, to do things. But it has a limit at some point where I can't go any farther with it. To know the limits of what you value and where your reward is at. If my reward is in people and what they think of me, that will make me feel good for a certain time, and I'll get that reward. Yet, what are the limits of that? I was challenged in this earlier in the year. I had a dream, and I woke up from this dream, and it was honestly just a terrifying dream. And it had to do with this exact situation of where my heart was at. And I basically got up and just like, you can't go back to sleep after something like that. I went and I curled up in my bathtub for like 2 hours and just wept and wept and wept. It says in Job that there's I don't have it right in front of me, but basically it says along the lines of, he'll give us a terrifying dream in the night to save us from our pride. And in facing the reality of where my reward is was so disheartening. But it's not permanent. It's not permanent. There's this very interesting thing that there can be so much debate on, even in Christian circles, but there's this very, very important thing called choice. Choice. And I want to say that your reward, right now, we are getting what we want. We chose our reward. We choose our reward. And if we're not happy with what we're getting right now, we can choose into something else. And you know what that's called? That's called faith. Because you're not there yet you're choosing into it, believing for something different. That's faith. Deuteronomy 30:15 says, "Now listen, today I'm giving you a choice between life and death, between prosperity and disaster." It's not you see, I'm giving you a choice. There's a lot of power in the hands there. It's a choice. It requires faith to step into a new place there. If our greatest reward is to have connection with the Father, it's going to require things like faith. Hebrews 11:6 says, "It's impossible to please God without faith. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him." I heard somebody pretty awesome say, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I actually believe that one of the most dangerous things that the world faces today is us as people having our eyes set on the wrong prize. One of the most dangerous things in the world today is us as people having our eyes set on the wrong prize. Because that's where things go astray. People are powerful. When I say that, it's because we all bear the signature of God in some fashion, in total fashion. So we are therefore powerful in what we can choose into. Having our eyes set on the wrong prize. I know we'd like to think, when I said that, probably, especially with a lot of political stuff going on recently, it's probably pretty easy to think and maybe put certain people in the box of having their eyes set on the wrong prize, on the wrong reward. But I want to encourage, or exhort, I should say, all of us to not put ourselves out of that picture. Include yourself in that analysis. Because the reality is, I can't step up here without at least the temptation to want praise from men. I can't step up here without at least the temptation. I used to get really frustrated at this, to be honest. And I used to be like, God, I so badly want them to hear what I'm trying to bring forward in connection. I want so badly to hear it. And it so bothers me of why I feel, I don't know, it's just that icky feeling of like, why do I care so much about what people think of this? Like, you gave me a great word to share. Why is this so relevant in my mind? Can I encourage you guys today to find some clarity, if you don't have it already, on exactly what you want? What is your reward? Because right now, we are getting exactly what we want. Are you happy with it? Do you know the limits of what you're getting? It may not be in its fullness yet, but do you know the limits of what you're getting? Because where your reward is, that is how you will show up in your life today. You know, there's to set your mind and your heart on the things, because it is a battlefield of the mind. To choose into a different desire, man, you have to like step into it without knowing if it's even going to work out or not, right? It is faith. It's a battlefield of the mind. To step into a place like that, it takes faith. It's going to take a different operating system, you know. But if you just know even what you want, all of a sudden, progress can be made. In Mark 24 through 34, I'm not going to read it, but basically, I'm going to paraphrase it. It's the story of the woman who was subject to bleeding for like 12 years. And she goes up, and Jesus is walking to actually go address something else. And she's spent all her money on the doctors to try to get this resolved. She's in suffering. She has all these issues that are just challenged her, right? She is over it. She's over it. But she says, if I just touch his cloak, I'll be healed. If I just touch his clothes. You know what? It's not even that what she really, really wanted at the time was specifically Jesus. She wanted healed, right? But when she did it, and it says that immediately she could tell in her body that she was healed. And Jesus turned around, and he's like, who touched me? And he didn't do it to point her out. He did it to say something along the lines of, your faith has made you well. And did she make a connection with Jesus there? She absolutely did. And can I tell you that connection that she made was a connection of where she saw that he would have done it even if she just asked. But she wanted it so bad that she just went up and took it. Some people might call that stealing. Jesus didn't. In fact, he commended her for her faith. What if faith was having a clear desire of what you want and stepping out in whatever way it took to get it? I'm not saying like go break the law, go do unethical things. But let me ask you that. How badly do you really want it? Because you're getting what you want. And if you're like, yeah, I'd like to be healed. She could have sat there and said, I'd like to be healed someday. Maybe someday I'll go ask for prayer. No, she literally chased him down in a crowd and thought, if I could just touch his cloak, I'll be healed. What do you want, and how bad do you want it? Jesus called it faith. Jesus called it faith. If you've decided the reward that you want, you'll know where to find it and who to get it from. They both the people that wanted praise from men and the person who did it privately with God, they both got what they wanted. But when it's all said and done, is what you're getting what you would have set forward the whole time if you wrote the story from the end back? Now, does this mean that you don't do anything with people in faith? No. And Jesus, he even had this situation where he couldn't even keep what he did secret, hardly. He heals this guy born blind, And he's like, don't tell anybody. And what does he do? He goes and tells everybody. And everybody's cousin. He couldn't even keep it a secret. But the fact that he even said, hey, don't tell anybody, said, this is where my audience is. I don't need everyone else to know this. Do you think Jesus knew that he'd probably go tell everybody? Right. You can't do anything about that. But if I want to connect with him and him only, like if I was to set out a $20 bill right here, and I think to myself, man, this is what I want to give to God right now. Just out of the cash out of my wallet, I just think it'd be fun. Just give him these $20. Now I think this to myself, but 300 of you just saw it sitting there. What are the chances it's going to be there 30 minutes from now? And do you think God's going to be the one that took it? If I really want him to get it, where should I put it? In a place where only the one who sees everything can find it. Go after it. You know, what happens when we do this is that, like, our relations with people, as this comes out, Jesus said, it's out of the overflow of the heart that the mouth speaks. And then he says, I will give you springs of living water that will well up within your soul. And he said, I will give you a good measure, pressed down to overflowing. So what happens in that relationship in private is that something is created in there where you start overflowing, and as a very good friend of mine said, you work out of the overflow. Your connection with people now is out of the overflow. When we're actually going and trying to get our praise from men, what happens is we're actually empty, and we're trying to fill it up because we haven't realized that if you just go to the source, he'll fill you up, and he'll take care of that. And then when you give to others, it's out of the overflow. But if the reward is from men, then you can just keep getting it, but you'll find quickly the limits of where you put your reward and what you want. Find very quickly. I don't know, maybe it's not such a bad lesson to go through some of that hard stuff and realize how limiting it is to make those kinds of choices and put your faith in such small things. We all do it. I do it. You've heard plenty of my stories of it. And then to go to the source and see, whoa, out of the private place, in the secret place of my heart, where deep calls to deep, he overflowed something that I've been looking for the whole time. Not only did he fill me up with it, he filled it so much that I can't even hold on to it. It just goes. It just goes. Where your reward is will decide how you show up in your life today, tomorrow, the next day. We can't go looking to men for something that only God can give us if our reward is from him. I'm going to pray, Lord, I am sorry for where I have purposely sought out the wrong reward. It is dangerous. It does not create a better world. And I want to find what you have in store for me in the secret place. In a place that only you can give something to me, because it's just us. There's nobody else in the conversation. That's what I want, Lord. I want an interaction like that. And that's what I want to speak over everyone here, is to have an interaction like that. Continuous interaction like that, where they find exactly what their soul longs for in a private discussion and in a secret place where gifts are exchanged freely between you and them. Thank you for the mercy that we have that as believers. Thank you for that. And help us, Lord, to focus our eyes on the right reward. Give us the right prize. Give us clarity in what we want so that at least we can move forward into the right things, into the things that bring abundance in our lives. Thank you, Lord, for extending the invitation already, that we're not just waiting on you to respond. You are already waiting on us and have offered your goodness. Let it be, Lord. Amen.